Imagine for a second that you're offered a choice. At the moment of your death, someone appears at the edge of the bed. They're here to give you two doors. Behind door one is everything you've ever been promised, a place where consciousness continues, where the people you loved are waiting, where the pain of being human doesn't reach you anymore. Behind door two is nothing, no thoughts, no dreams, nothing. Most people, without hesitating, would take door one. That would be a fatal mistake, a fate worse than anything we can comprehend, not because door one is a lie. Let's say it's completely real, everything promised, delivered. It's still the worst door, because you've never once pictured what you're actually asking for. The heaven in your head is a hug at the gate, a reunion. That's not heaven, that's the first 5 minutes of it. What you've never pictured is the 10,000th year, the room you can't leave. That's what forever means. And door two, you've never pictured that one either. You've only feared it. But look at what's actually behind it. No room, no waiting. The file on you closes. Every regret you were going to carry, closed. Every grudge held against you, closed. The people you lost aren't held somewhere, watching, unable to rest. They're released, and so are you. Nothing isn't a punishment. Nothing is the only door where everyone finally gets to put it all down. One of those is a trap. The other one is mercy, and you've had them the wrong way around your entire life. That's not stupidity. You never got the chance to choose. The answer was installed before you had a mouth to argue with. Mine was too. By the time I was 7, I already knew what happened after people died, in the specific dialect of the specific house I was born into, and I hadn't done a single second of thinking to arrive at that knowledge. It had arrived at me, handed to my parents by their parents, and to theirs by the ones before, and it's older than them. The Egyptians built tombs the size of mountains for the journey. The Aztecs cut hearts out of chests to feed it. The Christians built cathedrals designed to make a person walking in feel small in the presence of something that could not die. Different names, different rituals, different gods, same wish. Thousands of years of humans wishing for continuation, and in all that time, almost nobody stopped to check what the wish contains. We polished the door for 5,000 years. We never opened it. So that's what we're going to do. For the next 20 minutes, we're going to think about the afterlife more seriously and deeply than the people who promised it to us ever did. We're going to walk through it. The reunion, the forgiveness, the eternity, all of it, past the first 5 minutes of the gate. And I think, by the end, you're going to hope for the thing you've spent your whole life afraid of. I was 19 the year I couldn't sleep properly. I'd get into bed, turn off the light, and lie there for 2 hours thinking about the same thing every night for about 6 months. Not about dying, but about what will happen after we die. And I know I'm not the only one who has been there. Maybe some version of that has visited you too. Maybe not every night, maybe just some. Maybe at 3 in the morning, when the noise of the day is finally gone and there's nothing left in the room to distract you from your own thoughts. One thing about those ideas is that they don't disappear when you get older. They get more sophisticated. They learn to hide inside better words: faith, hope, belief. Sometimes, when the words don't work, they come back. And by the time we wake up, we find we have already forgotten those ideas because we have to. 50 years ago, an anthropologist named Ernest Becker wrote a book called The Denial of Death. It won the Pulitzer Prize the year after he died of cancer. Becker's argument, refined across his whole career, was that human beings cannot function while facing the fact of their own death directly, so we don't. Instead, we build religions, nations, monuments, careers, children, whole civilizations. Becker argued that almost every structure a human society constructs is in some form a symbolic defense against the terror of mortality, something to belong to, something to leave behind, something that keeps going after we don't. Every religion humans have built has, in some form, promised something after. Becker would say that fact is not evidence of the afterlife, it's evidence of us. We can hold two things at once. The belief in an afterlife is beautiful and human, and has held whole civilizations together, and it's still possible that what we've been calling faith is in part the shape our fear takes when we can't look at it directly. If that's true, then we might have been arguing about the wrong thing for a long time, not about whether an afterlife exists, about whether we can bear the alternative, and I don't think we've actually looked at the alternative. There's a promise buried inside almost every religion that ever promised anything. Come to God, and the slate is wiped. Repent, and it's gone. Confess, and it's gone. Take the last rites, take the ablution, take the ritual bath, and whatever you did in the years behind you no longer counts. You walk into the next room clean. That's a big offer, worth taking seriously. Because if it's real, it's the only version of an afterlife that solves what nothing else solves. It closes the file. It releases the dead from what was done to them, and the living from what they did, and everyone gets to start again. But look at what it actually costs. Think of a man. Somebody's father. He drank for 30 years, and he was cruel when he drank, and his children grew up flinching at the sound of a door opening. He never hit them in a way that showed. He just made the house a place where nobody could relax. Birthdays got ruined. His wife stopped inviting friends over sometime in the second decade. The kids learned to read the sound of his car in the driveway the way other kids learned to read books. He got sober in his 60s. He tried, in the last few years, to say some of what he hadn't said. Some of his children let him back in. Some didn't. He died at 72. Say he takes the offer. Somewhere in the last hour, he asks for it. The slate gets wiped. The man who walks through the door on the other side is calm. He is at peace. He does not remember the birthdays. He does not remember his wife's face after a whole night of crying, or the specific silence in the house on a Tuesday when the kids came home and saw the empty bottle on the counter. All of that has been lifted off him. He is, in every meaningful sense, a good man now. The question is whether he is still the man, because the father who did those things was made of those things. The cruelty wasn't a coat he was wearing, it was inside the tissue. It shaped what he found funny and what he didn't. It shaped the way he spoke to his wife. It shaped what he was afraid of and what he wasn't. If you lift all of that out of him, the person left standing isn't a reformed version of him. It's a stranger who happens to share his face. The father who walks into the reunion isn't the father who drank. He also isn't the father who got sober. Sobriety was the shape of a life spent climbing out of what he'd been. Take away what he'd been, and there's nothing to have climbed out of. The years of trying, the phone calls he made, and the ones he couldn't, all of it gets lifted off with the rest. Because you can't erase the cruelty and leave the recovery. The recovery was made of the cruelty. It was the answer to it. His kids walk up to him at the reunion. They spent their whole lives becoming the people they became, partly in response to who he was. They have scars he gave them, and lives they built partly in defiance of the house they grew up in. They look at him, and the man looking back doesn't know what they're talking about, not because he's pretending, but because the person who did those things isn't standing there anymore. They haven't been reunited with their father. They've been introduced to a stranger who has their father's face. Now say the wipe doesn't happen. Say the father keeps everything. He walks in remembering all of it. The birthdays, the car in the driveway, the look on his wife's face, the years his oldest daughter stopped taking his calls. He carries it in, whole, and now he has to sit with it, not for a week, not for the length of a life, for infinity. Say he's genuinely sorry. Say the sobriety was real, and the apology in the diner was real, and he'd have given anything to go back and be someone else in that house. Ask yourself how long it takes you in this life to stop feeling bad about something somebody did to you. Something small, a friend who lied, a partner who left, a parent who wasn't there. You know how long that takes. You know that some of it never fully leaves. It just gets quieter. Now imagine you're not allowed to let it get quieter, because the person who did it is sitting across the table from you forever. And every time you look at them, the file opens back up. The wipe erases the person. The refusal of the wipe traps the person. There is no third door. The clean slate sounds like mercy. It's actually a kind of quiet erasure. It takes the person who did the thing and the person who survived the thing, and it dissolves the connection between them so gently that nobody in the room notices what's been taken. What's been taken is the person. Because a human being isn't a soul in a body. A human being is the sum of what happened to them and what they did about it. Lift the record out, and what's left isn't a purer version. It's a lighter one. Lighter in the way a room is lighter after somebody moves out. The you that lived, the one who did a good thing or a bad thing. That version of you doesn't survive the wipe. And if the you that walks into the next room isn't the you that lived, then the you that lived didn't walk into anything. The you that lived stopped at the door, which is death, just with a longer name. Forget about you for a minute. Think about somebody else, a boy, 14. There was a kid at his school who made his life unbearable for 2 years. One night, the boy went home, wrote a note nobody found until the morning, and didn't wake up. The bully who did it grew up, went to college, got married, had children of his own, told himself, most days, that he'd been a kid too, that kids are cruel, that it wasn't really his fault, that the boy must have had other things going on. He died at 78 of natural causes in his own bed with his family around him. Now say there's an afterlife. The boy is there. He hasn't aged. He's still 14, which was his age the night he died. His mother is there too, whenever she got there, and his father, and the brother who was supposed to wake him up for school the next morning, and instead found what he found. They've been waiting. The man walks in. There is no version of that room where anything gets resolved. He can apologize. Maybe he does. Immediately. Maybe he spends the first 1,000 years apologizing. Maybe the boy accepts, because the boy was always kind, and that was part of the problem. Now there's still eternity left. Every time the man looks at the boy, he knows what he did. Every time the boy looks at the man, the boy knows too. And every time the mother looks at either of them, she remembers her son's room the morning she opened the door. Nothing settles. There is no year in which it settles. Eternity doesn't have a middle. It just extends. Now scale it up. A man breaks into a house, kills a woman for what's in her house, and disappears. He's never caught. Her 2 children grow up without her. They get older, get married, have their own kids, and die of old age still not knowing his name. He lives out his life somewhere else, spends the money, forgets what she looked like. Say there's an afterlife. She's there. She's been there since the night he came in. The husband she left behind gets there next, then her sister, then her mother, then, eventually, her children, who spent their whole lives with the shape of her missing from every family photograph. When the man dies, he walks into that room. Does she forgive him? Say she does. Say she's a better person than most of us. Say she tells him she understands he was human, and lost, and afraid. Now there's still eternity left. Every morning of it, she remembers the way he looked at her the night he came in. Every morning of it, he remembers the way she looked at him. Her children, who are now 90 years old on the inside and small children on the outside because their souls came in at 90, keep asking questions about a night they weren't in the room for. Forgiveness doesn't make it stop being the thing that happened. Forgiveness just changes the tone in the room. The room doesn't go away, now go bigger. The men whose names everyone knows, the tyrants, the ones you'd list if someone asked you for the worst humans who ever lived. If there's an afterlife, they're somewhere. And wherever they are, the people they killed are there too. All 6 million, all 10 million. Every one of them. The soldiers on both sides of every war anyone still remembers. The soldiers on both sides of every war nobody does. Every boy who was drafted at 19 and killed another boy who was drafted at 19, and now both of them are in the same room together, forever, with the mothers of both of them, and the wives, and the children who never got to be born. If forgiveness is possible, then every murderer is eventually welcomed, which sounds gentle until you sit with it. The people who died at their hands have to keep sitting across from them forever, with the memory of what happened still intact. Forgiven doesn't mean forgotten. Nothing is ever forgotten there. That's what forever means. If forgiveness isn't possible, then the afterlife is a war, not a metaphorical one, a literal one, extending in every direction, with every wound anyone ever caused still open on both sides of the room, and no year in which any of it heals. Call that room hell if you want, but if that's hell, hell isn't fire. Hell is just the reunion, scaled up. There's a third option, the one most religions quietly reach for when the math gets bad. Everyone gets changed. Everyone gets purified. The murderer walks in, and the murder gets lifted off him. The mother walks in, and the wound gets lifted off her. Nobody remembers the specifics of what happened, or if they do, the specifics don't hurt anymore. Everyone is at peace, but look at what that costs. If the mother no longer feels what happened to her, she isn't the same mother. If the boy no longer remembers the hallway, he isn't the same boy. If the man no longer carries what he did, he isn't the same man. Every person in that room has had the part of them that made them themselves lifted out, and what's left is a soft shape that agrees with everyone else's soft shape. That's not a reunion, that's a replacement, and now we're back at the beginning. Because if the you that walks into heaven has to be changed enough to survive being there, then the you that lived doesn't survive it either, which is death, just with a longer name. That's the reunion. There's a number that comes up in demographic research. Roughly 108 billion humans have ever lived. That's the running total. Everyone who was born, in every generation, in every corner of the earth, since we became what we became. If there's an afterlife, they're all there, every one of them. Every child who died at 3 in every century, every soldier from every war anyone still remembers, and every war nobody does, every plague victim from every plague, every mother who died in childbirth in a village whose name has been forgotten, every tyrant, every good man nobody wrote down, every person who thought their language was the only language, all of them in the same place, speaking, presumably a common language, living, presumably in some kind of continuous state, reunited presumably with everyone else in some kind of family arrangement that scales cleanly from a Bronze Age farming village to a modern city of 10 million. That's before we ask about the animals. Where do the dogs go? Where do the cats go? Do the whales get a section? What about the horses? When exactly, on the tree of life, did the soul begin? Was it with the first mammal, or somewhere further back than that? Because every one of them died too, and every one of them, if they had a soul, is somewhere. And every teacher who broke them, and every ex who broke them, and every priest who lied to them, all of them, in one place, without a door. Some philosophers of mind have proposed that consciousness might not be reducible to individual brains at all, that it might be a fundamental feature of the universe, expressed through us for a while, and returning to something larger when we're done. This is called panpsychism, roughly. Even Chalmers, one of the most respected thinkers on consciousness, has flirted with something like it. If they're right, that might be a version of continuation, but look at what it actually offers. A drop of water rejoining the ocean is not the drop continuing, it's the drop ending, in the most complete way possible. It isn't saved, it's dissolved. Every version of continuation, when we look at it closely, has the same problem. Either the you that keeps going isn't you in any meaningful sense, or the you that keeps going has to keep being you forever. In a room with 108 billion strangers, we've been picturing our grandmother at the gate. We haven't been picturing the crowd behind her. My grandmother, near the end of her life, said something to me I've never been able to shake. We were sitting in her kitchen. She was making tea in the slow, deliberate way she'd started doing everything at the end, when the pot felt heavier than she remembered it being. She said, without looking at me, that she was tired, not sick tired, not just had a long day tired. She said the word the way you'd say it about a coat you'd been wearing for 80 years and were finally allowed to take off. She wasn't asking for pity, she was just telling me, and I remember standing there realizing this woman had loved her life and loved us and was done. She was allowed to be done. It wasn't sad, it was almost the opposite of sad. It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. You've heard something like it before, maybe from your own grandmother, maybe from your father. Maybe you've said it yourself, in some room, to someone you trust, in a voice you don't usually use. It's rare to hear people say it out loud. In real life, it would sound alarming, but it doesn't mean people don't feel it. Before we go further, something worth admitting. The hard problem of consciousness is real. We do not fully understand what consciousness is, or how it arises, or whether the brain is fully responsible for it. Reasonable people disagree. Anyone who tells you they know for certain what happens when we die is probably lying, including anyone who tells you it's definitely nothing. That has to be admitted. But there's a difference between certainty and hope. You don't have to know for certain that death is nothing. You can hope it is. And this is the part we skip over. We spend so much energy hoping for something that we never stop to ask what we'd be hoping for if we hope for the other thing. If we hope for nothing, we're hoping our regrets die with us. That the people we couldn't apologize to don't have to keep holding it. That the friend who died at 24 doesn't spend eternity being 24 held in place waiting for a reunion we scheduled without asking. That our grandmother, who was tired at the end, gets to be tired no more. We already went through nothing. For 13.8 billion years before we existed, we were nothing. It didn't hurt. There was no one to be hurt. From our perspective, the entire history of the universe up to our birth passed in less than a second because there was no perspective. When we die, that's what our future looks like. It won't be cruel because there won't be anyone left to be cruel to. The reason we're scared of it isn't that it's bad. Our brain, which knows how to imagine everything, can't imagine its own absence, so it fills the gap with fear. That fear isn't information. It's a glitch. It's the brain refusing to picture its own off switch. We've been terrified of the same thing we already survived. We just don't remember surviving it because there was nobody there to remember. That's how safe it is. And the people we love who died before us, they're in it right now, and it isn't hurting them. If we really loved them, this is what we would hope for them, not the reunion. The release. We'd hope our grandmother was allowed to rest, actually rest, not to be moved into some other room and asked to keep going. And, eventually, the same for us. Every night, for a few hours, you go somewhere that has no name. There's no you there, no fear, no memory of the day you just lived. And every morning, if you don't fail, you come back. Death might just be the one night you're finally allowed to stay. The people we've loved and lost maybe are not in some waiting room. If there's a place they went, they got there before us. And if we ever really loved them, maybe the kindest thing we could hope for isn't that we get to see them again. Maybe the kindest thing we could hope for is that they don't have to wake up.